I am the Deputy Programme Manager of the Child and Family Studies degree, which is based at the Lifelong Learning Centre in the University of Leeds. So the Lifelong Learning Centre works specifically with widening participation, so many of our students are older. The Child and Family Studies degree, which I'm going to refer to as CFS, is delivered on a part-time basis, so our students are combining their studies alongside home and work commitments. We also have very small cohorts, and the programme itself is delivered using the flipped model of learning. So they are doing work each week, and then the sessions that we have are much more discursive based. So reflection is something that is embedded throughout the programme from day one, because tutors, we're all going, and what do you think? How do you know? What's your evidence for it? So PebblePad is something that is new to me. I've only started using it very, very recently, and it's becoming now a repository for the reflective tasks, formative tasks that I have been using in modules for which I'm the lead. So I'm just going to look at my notes now. So, yes, so the presentation is going to use Borton's three-stage what's, so what, and now what, to explain the rationale for a PebblePad workbook as a reflective tool to support Level 3 students preparing for an assessed mock interview in which they articulate how degree content has enhanced their professional practice and development. And those are some of the module learning outcomes. And so in a sense, they are reflecting for action, as Justin was saying, that action being the assessed mock interview itself. In the programme, I have lead responsibility for the reflection professional literacy stroke employability element, drawing on my previous experience of supervising social work students during their compulsory placements within the workplace. As Villarreal et al. State, educators must know and understand the skills required in that sector and support students to recognise and articulate the transferability of their studies to their current and/or intended workplace. So, I should have had that bit there throughout. Sorry. So what was the problem? Well, I'm just going to put that down. Since 2018, this module 3955, which comes in the third year, has included a mock interview. Now, academic assessments require evidence of knowledge, but my evaluation of the interviews in those early years noted that students' answers remained within parameters of the reflective process, but they were not expanding to incorporate content from across the degree. They were demonstrating knowledge of reflection as a series of stages to move through, but graduate employers want evidence of how university content has contributed to the skills and the knowledge within the job and person specifications. For students, when a module has ended, they forget about it, move on to the next. But a central ripple of Phil Race's Ripples on a Pond model is what students need to know. So how could students be supported to make new connections between university and the workplace? The so what stage was informed by changes within the University of Leeds curriculum, and this included a focus on professional literacy to embed opportunities for students to begin thinking about the transferability of their studies into the workplace and develop the skills and knowledge required to inform decisions around their future career direction. Alongside this, the PG CAP Action Research module that I was completing, I did this with 2 focus groups of CFS students, exploring if and how learning could be consolidated between academic years. Feedback from both groups was that learning was not lost during the summer months, but instead was hidden beneath various competing responsibilities, which is one of the key elements of when we're working with adult students. That andragogical model is recognising that they have got competing responsibilities alongside their studies. feedback from yes, but instead of him beneath various responsibilities, and this knowledge needed to be brought to the surface when required, such as for an assignment. But their place, neither at home nor in their workplace, were they required to name the theoretical models that they were using. So big declarative knowledge was rarely retained beyond an assignment. But the essence of those models was becoming functioning knowledge and being applied at home and within work. My challenge then was to design a workbook that enabled them that reminded them of previous module content alongside other tasks that started to trap students within the process of reflecting on their professional development. And this is where I started to use PebblePad because it was becoming increasingly used with colleagues within the LLC. And that's where I was introduced to Patricia, the doyenne of PebblePad at Leeds, who has supported and guided me throughout this process. So, the process of defining and scaffolding reflection reminded me of my first encounter with reflection as a social work student. It was a word used like confetti, uttered by tutors at university and placement supervisors, but looking back, I had no idea what it meant, its purpose, or how to do it. There's an assumption that I kind of knew what to do, but nobody told me. Moving into qualified work and then into social work education, again, looking back, I muddled through. But it is since moving into my current HE educator role that I feel that I've started to get a pedagogical grip on this word. And my social work experience moved reflection from beyond comparing different models, which has been addressed in earlier modules, to emphasising the importance of becoming critically reflective practitioners, defined by Bassett in that quote on the screen. Scaffolding the ability to become critically reflective practitioners was informed by Race's model, which identifies different ripples underpinning successful learning, such as learning by doing, feedback, and talking it through. Tutors can provide and facilitate these ripples, but, according to Race, only students themselves can make connections between module content, the assessment tasks, and their own experiences. Applying this model to their own learning was another way of reflecting on their development, of identifying what worked for them and why. I also introduced Thompson's Think, Feel, Do model, which itself argues that learning itself involves doing as well as thinking and feeling. Naming internal processes required students to become aware of what was happening within themselves, and from that focusing not just on another person's actions, but the thoughts and feelings that might be influencing those actions and words. So very briefly, from September 2026 and 27, so next academic year, next 2 academic years, components of the workbook will be deployed within shared level 2 modules across 3 separate degree programmes within the Lifelong Learning Centre. Because most graduate employers seek the same skills such as teamwork, problem solving and reflection, irrespective of degree subject. This module, for which I'm going to be the lead, will be an assessed portfolio hosted on PebblePad. So I'll be learning how to embed formative tasks alongside summative assessments, which will include adapting the interview model itself. So just very briefly, before I started using PebblePad, these are some of the examples of the pre-workbook formative tasks that I use to get students in their weekly work to start thinking about how does something like Thompson's model apply to them, how are they starting to use it. And it all feeds into the summative assessment, which in that year was an assignment on communication. So they were introduced to lots of different chapters around communication in its broadest context, and then they had to write a communication assignment using the Schoen's in and on action, and then the final assignment was a SWOT self-analysis where they did put forward an academic action plan and a professional action plan. In the current workbook that the third years are using, to prepare for the mock interview. This is just an example of one of the tabs as previous modules, and I remind them of what they did in year 1, year 2 and year 3, as well as the optional modules that they've taken over the course of their degree. And when I say year 1, year 2, year 3, that's because it's over a part-time process rather than full-time. And this is the communications module that they did, so it's just reminding them what they had done. This is just an example of week 3's instructions. So PebblePad is a reflective tool that they use alongside the other information that's provided on Minerva, which is the University of Leeds host. So they have 2 tabs open. So I'm always reminding them about PebblePad, and then asking them to do, about the modules, sorry, and then asking them to do a skills activity on PebblePad, followed by AI conversation on Minerva, where they're kind of having a conversation with me on Minerva and practicing it out. And then they put the preparation for the CV and rationale, which is the first assessment before the interview. So I can see both the conversation on Minerva and the journal that they provide on PebblePad. And we're using PebblePad, one, because they also have this ability, they can use this, they have access to this after university, so they can then self-assess their development from being a student to further on in their career. And I'm going to finish there. So if you want to hear an example of a student's answer to the question of, since being at university, how has your professional communication been enhanced, how has it changed? You can click on this QR code that I've learned how to do in the last couple of weeks, the audio, and then the transcript. And those are the module learning outcomes. Thank you very much.